Okay, so fantastic. Yeah, I'll just give you some background. I'm an architect and a designer originally, turned into a software entrepreneur. I also teach at a master's program on integrated design. And just to keep myself busy, I'm a hired evangelist for innovation management and business design, and something I call strategic creativity. Where exactly do we apply our creativity on a strategic perspective? I'm also part of the Google Experts Group. And what I'm mostly interested in is the innovation operation itself, as an operation, as a process of production. So, of course, we know about the strategy and execution gaps, but there's also the imagination and realization gaps. And put together, they can turn into a big issue. So, looking at what already exists, we know the jobs to be done perspective framework by Clayton Christensen. And there's also a getting things done by David Allen. But what happens between them? What happens between what we understand about what the customer wants or needs or desires, and then how we can prioritize task issues and operations? How do we actually understand what those things are? So when we imagine innovation, we basically think about like fancy labs and you know, like creative spots. But actually innovation is more like a warehouse. There's a lot of ideas being thrown at the ramp and need to be organized, categorized, and placed in order, because there's trucks coming up in the afternoon to pick those ideas. And basically those warehouses are operated by not so special people and who are not always interested in what they do. So this is basically more like an innovation process. Just to set the stage, there's some terminologies, you know, I'll just skip them quickly. You can read them. So there's innovation, there's design, and there's creativity. And when we put enterprise design, it's basically combining all of these things, and of course the process, which goes all the way through the fuzzy front end, the messy middle, where you understand it's just so complicated, and the murky background, when you realize everything that you weren't told and you weren't aware of. It's a promised recipe for a wicked problem. So wicked problems are something that we deal with on a continuous basis. They are surprising, just like this computer. They are, you know, unpredicted. You don't know them until you get to them. So designers are becoming really, really important. Not because they can sit in a nicely organized manner, but because they are experienced in wicked problem solving. And the way that they're doing that, and this is, I think, the big, you know, thing to understand about designers, is that they use diagrams. So when a designer uses a diagram, it's basically a thinking tool that quickly represents what they're thinking, what they're dealing with, what's the problem that they're trying to solve. They can start sketching different types of solutions to these questions, and basically imagine, you know, explore ideas, make decisions, prioritize, validate, and communicate, and also guide execution, because we also do that, you know, to make like actual decisions, what materials we're using, how we're going to use them. Yeah, and we do these diagrams in many, many forms. So we know there's early sketches, and we have those realizations, and then of course the diagram needs to be scalable as well. So this is something that as a designer, you learn for years how to use these diagrams. So the scheme, the design diagram, becomes a really, really important work tool. And I think this is a fantastic quote by Sanford that explains, you know, that it actually, you know, represents the reality in a way that reinforms the imaginative realities. So what a design diagram is composed of is actually, you know, it tells us about the form, it tells us about the formation, and it tells us about the information needed. All this information is packed into this really sketchy thing. And if it's not there, it's asking us, where is this information? So a good diagram should be simple, scalable, sustainable, and of course communicative, because we need those diagrams to communicate with our colleagues. So of course, now when we think about the jobs to be done and the getting things done, what I realized over the years is there are a lot of things to be done along the way. And then what are those things to be done? So the things to be done is actually an evolutionary business design framework which exposes wicked problems, and it identifies specific operations that generate creative solutions, or it would explain why things fail. And the main idea behind this diagram thinking is thinking through these three endpoints: goals, accomplishments, and programs. And I'll focus on accomplishments soon, but I think through these three entities you can describe anything an enterprise wants to do, or has to do, or needs to do. So the diagram is very simple, actually. It's a hierarchical diagram. It has the goals. It asks, what are the accomplishments associated with these goals? And what are the programs, the actually courses of operation needed to fulfill these accomplishments? And of course, each program might have additional accomplishments that are required and additional programs. Now, the good thing about it is that immediately, if we organize our thoughts and ideas in this way, we can start seeing what's missing and what do we don't know. So that's the first thing. And then, of course, we can start identifying where are the hotspots. Are there places which are wrong? Are there places which I need to add more accomplishments to my game plan? So I think that the main focus, and I've been trying this methodology in my students for a few years, and with projects I'm working in, and just small corrections, I work with startups, I work with NGOs, I work with government organizations, I work with large companies, helping innovation leaders come up with the right innovation program for their operations. But then I realized that accomplishment-based thinking, that's not so easy. It's not that intuitive. I mean, what it is about is basically asking, how can I transform them? What needs to happen so this thing becomes this thing? All right? And there's so many ways of doing that. So what needs to happen? We basically need to build some sort of morphological analysis or morphological matrices, because there's different types of activities, and each activity can have different types of occurrences. So what's the problem? Yeah, most people don't think in accomplishments. Most people think about, what are my motivations at best? What are the actions I'm going to do? And what are the procedures? So the procedures are easy. We can explain procedures, we can explain actions, but we're thinking, if we have a problem, and I say, yes, I will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can describe my actions, not necessarily the accomplishments. And I've been seeing that, I've been researching that with my students for a few years, and it's really hard, even for them, for design students on a master's degree, to translate their intentions into a set of accomplishments. The toolbox for the frameworks actually consists of 4 parts. So we have the map diagrams, which is basically the motivations, actions, and prerequisites. We have the gap diagrams, which is the goals, accomplishments, and programs. Then we have several tools, which are finders, which is based on a set of questions that we need to ask based on these diagrams that we're creating, very, very easily and very, very quickly. And then we have the solvers to actually direct us towards where the solution is. So moving from action-based thinking to accomplishment-based thinking, I think this is what the important thing is. Very, very easily, I mean, on a small case, you can show that to someone and ask him, what's not right with this picture? What's wrong with it? What do you don't like about it? Those diagrams that designers do, they actually communicate with them continuously. It's just like, oh yeah, I did that, but I don't like how it looks like. I think the material should be different. I think the process should be different. We need to allow business people or corporate people to get into that same place. Otherwise, because if we work on plans, everyone gets defensive. So once you have a diagram, it's just a sketchy thing. And then I look at it, it says like, this diagram, it's not you guys are excellent, but this diagram is a bit lacking. Something's missing there. Something's not right. And then it says, oh yeah, we forgot that, and we forgot that, and forgot that. And immediately, new ideas come into the picture. And then you say, okay, now, once we've mapped the motivations, all right, and the actions, and the prerequisites, we can go and actually build the gap diagram. And the gap diagram shows very, very clearly what needs to be done. And once those things are in order, it helps us ask very, very simple questions. First of all, do we have a scheme? I mean, this is something that every designer asks, like, do I have a scheme? Basically ask himself, do I have a perception of what I'm doing? Do I have confidence in that scheme? is this diagram serving me? Does it show me the right way? Did I validate that? So I can show it to my colleagues and I can ask them about that. Based on, these assumptions, can I anticipate my resource availability? All right? And of course, if everything is fine and I followed my own design, did I make any success? Right? Did I make any achievement? And that's important because this is actual learning by doing process. And on the other hand, if something's wrong with that part, then I start asking myself, what's missing? Am I missing several elements, in the design? Am I missing some clarity? I have the element. I mean, part of the problems I think with design thinking is that it turned into this really nice flow. This is empathize, ideate, research, blah. So I can emphasize in 70 million ways, and I can do research in according to 100, frameworks. And when it puts in front of creative people who are, have access to the internet, each one will get their own perspective on how to do things. So do I have clarity? Now, I got the elements, I got the clarity. Do I get adoption? Because innovation is all about adoption. That's the only thing in innovation, to my opinion, is we need to, put people in a situation or organization situations where they adopt ideas, when they adopt workflows, when they adopt new products, new services. We need to adopt things. And then, of course, we need all these things. We have all these things, and nothing is realized. That means there's a lot of knowledge missing. So this gap diagram is really, really powerful in closing the strategy execution gap and also the imagination realization gap. It forces us to invest a lot of attention without the need to invest a lot of time and money into thinking about what we're doing. And then, of course, once we have those diagrams, we can start looking at, how do we actually solve, the problems. Because designers are always about discontent, and it was mentioned today. So dissatisfaction is an inherent part of design. All the design I know started with some sort of dissatisfaction. Otherwise, everything would be the same as it was. But once, I have this dissatisfaction, and I've spent a lot of time, both in, startups and also in design schools, we have this thing that's something's bugging, but I don't know exactly why or what. And we need to understand that so we can start, in any way. Is someone bugging you? Is it me? Is it my advisors? Is it my customers? Are those my stakeholders? And then what's the nature of this discomfort? Is it because something's wrong or something's right? Is something missing? Is something exceeding? And then I can go to the cause and says, what is that? Is it knowledge? Is it a certain partner that I need in the process? Is it the reality that I'm operating in that's totally missing from, my design? Or are there some resources? I can do the other thing from that side over. Okay, I don't have a partner, or I don't have some resources. Why? Is it because something's exceeding or something's missing? Who do I turn to? Do I turn to my advisors? Do I turn to my customers? So I can easily navigate along these questions and really start finding those missing things to be done. And I think those missing things to be done, if they're found quickly, they help us kind of slide through the wicked problems. And those wicked problems don't become traumas. So I've been operating with this framework for quite a while, and it's always exciting to see how quickly you can find a problem. For example, one large government organization actually who wants to build a special innovation program, but is stuck with it for quite a while. And they're doing this amazing research, and they're doing really, really a great job at building up this program, but it doesn't work. And apparently what was missing was there was some sort of decision-making process that was missing, that was lacking in the process. And without it, no decision was able to be made on this amazing program that they developed. So that was a really, really small thing. Just had to put this program aside for a few weeks, think of the decision-making process, and then the process immediately moved on. So yeah, I have other examples, but I don't have more time. Yeah, it's a good way to get a feeling. It's a good way to communicate. we are used to like having can you make me a one pager, and then we get like a one pager full of buzzwords, or can we do like a thinking sessions, and again we get like a 30-minute speech, highly associative. This sort of diagrams reveal, dude, that you have a mess. And of course reiterate, because the diagram, you need to reiterate on the diagram. So if you invest a lot of money and time in the diagram, you'll not repeat that. You just do it once and it'll become like a, like a piece of art. But if you do a sketchy diagram, it's quite comfortable to reiterate on it. So that's the things to be done methodology. I'll be around for the next 2 days. I'll be happy if you have questions about it and want to continue exploring it. That's me. Thank you.